Welcome, fearless viewers, to another chilling tale from our realm of horror. Tonight, we delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche, where shadows lurk and fear reigns supreme. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community of horror enthusiasts. Help us reach our next milestone of 800 subscribers, as we continue to uncover spine-tingling stories that will haunt your dreams. Now, brace yourself, as the journey into the unknown begins. I used to be a janitor for a high school. It was a job that I only had for about a year. This was back in 2019. The job itself was not too bad, but I moved on to other things later. For the most part, when I worked as a janitor, I would work overnights in the high school. I was typically all by myself. I would start at 9 o'clock at night and get off at 5 in the morning. The high school was large, but not so big that I couldn't manage it. With all that time and the whole place to myself, I could clean everything I was supposed to a few times over. Due to events on school campus, there were often some people still around by the time I started, but they would usually all be gone within an hour or two. I would do the things you'd expect: mop the floors, vacuum, sweep, maintain the bathrooms. Not every room required attention daily, so it's not like I was cleaning every single classroom every night. I would have a lot of downtime where I just went on my phone or did whatever I wanted. It was honestly a really decent job. The only downside was that I had to turn into a nocturnal creature and sleep during the day. Another downside was doing it all by myself and spending the night alone in a big school, which sometimes felt creepy. Most of the lights would be off, and a lot of them were motion activated. A single area would light up when I got near. One night, I was working in a hallway, cleaning the floors. It was about midnight or 1 a.m., I think. Suddenly, I thought I could hear footsteps coming from not far away. I looked over but didn't see anything. The footsteps might not have been from someone in my line of sight, they could have been coming around the corner. It was hard to tell. I walked over, wondering if someone else was in the building. As far as I knew, I was supposed to be alone. I made it to the end of the hallway and looked around. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I went back to where I had been and continued working. Maybe I had just imagined it. I wasn't 100% sure, they hadn't been very loud. About 10 minutes later, I began to hear footsteps again. This time I knew for sure I was hearing them. I looked toward the end of the hallway and was surprised when I saw a man walking by. I only saw him for a couple of seconds, as he passed the hall and went into another. In that short time, I could tell it was a grown adult, though I couldn't make out any details. He was kind of far away. I started walking over and called out, asking who was there. Nobody was supposed to be here. Of course, the man didn't answer. When I got to the end of the hallway and looked around, he was gone. There were other halls he could have gone down, so I walked a little farther, looking around and calling out. If someone was there, they weren't keen on responding. After that, I wasn't sure what to do. I went back to work. Some time passed, and eventually, I moved down another hallway. Probably 3 hours or so had gone by since I last saw the guy. This time, I was facing the end of the hallway when, out of nowhere, I heard a noise behind me. I couldn't tell exactly what it was. I turned around and saw a basketball rolling in my direction. It passed me and hit a locker. When I looked to where it had come from, I didn't see anybody. I suspected whoever was in the building had stood at the end of the hall and rolled the ball toward me, then moved out of sight. Why they would do that, I had no idea. I picked up the ball and walked to the end of the hallway where it had clearly been rolled from. I called out again, asking if anyone was there. Still, no answer. I stood there in silence for 5 minutes, looking around. I didn't see or hear anything at all. Somebody was clearly messing with me, but why? They weren't even supposed to be there in the first place. I went back to work. From that point on, I wasn't bothered again for the rest of my shift. When I was finishing up, just before I left, I decided to walk all around the school looking for this person. I went into every wing and hallway, asked if anybody was there, and even checked all the bathrooms. Nobody answered. I didn't see anyone either. At 5 in the morning, I got off. Another janitor arrived. I told him what happened and asked him to keep an eye out for anyone suspicious. Then I left the school and drove home. At the time, I was living alone in a small house about 10 minutes from the school. I arrived back, and my usual routine was to go to bed and get some sleep. It was strange to go to sleep at 6 a.m., but I had gotten used to it. That day, 5 minutes after I got home, I was in my kitchen when I heard a knock at my front door. Instantly, I was confused. I walked over to the living room and looked out the front window. Nobody was there. But as I looked more closely, I saw someone off in the distance, walking down the street away from my house. I saw him for just a second or two before he ducked out of sight. It looked like the same guy from the school. I was so creeped out I couldn't fall asleep for hours. Luckily, he never came back. And after that day, nothing like that ever happened in the school again. I still wonder who that man was, and why he was doing all that. This happened when I was a pizza delivery driver for Domino's. I worked there for about 6 months while I was in college. I would drive my old Honda around the city I lived in and made decent money for a student. Most of the time, I worked nights. We would sometimes get really busy, so I'd have a lot of deliveries to make. This story takes place on a Friday night. I was working until 2 a.m. After midnight, things usually quieted down. I got a delivery a little after 1. I got the address, went out to my car, and put the directions in. It was only 9 minutes away. I remembered that when I arrived, the neighborhood was pretty dark. There weren't many streetlights, and there were only a few houses scattered along the street. On the other side was a random parking lot, some grass, and woods. I parked on the side of the road and walked up to the building. It was 2 or 3 stories high and looked pretty old. When I reached the front door, I realized the apartment I was supposed to deliver to was upstairs. It looked like some kind of old apartment building. I opened the door and walked in. Immediately to the left was a door leading to one unit, and straight ahead was a staircase. The unit I was delivering to was number 209, so I went up the narrow, long staircase to the top. When I got there, there were only 2 doors, one to my left, and one directly in front of me. 209 was the one in front. The person who ordered the pizza hadn't paid yet, so I needed to collect the money. I knocked on the door, expecting them to answer, but no one came. I knocked again and waited about a minute. It was really quiet. Suddenly, I heard the door downstairs open, the one I had just come through. 2 men walked in. They were both wearing all black, including ski masks. Immediately, I felt something was wrong. They looked up at me and started walking up the stairs. I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what to do. They kept getting closer. Just as they reached the top, it became obvious what they were about to do. I tried to open the door to Unit 209, but it was locked. I panicked. I still had the hot pizza in my hands, so I threw it at them. Then I looked over the railing beside me. There was a walkway below, near the stairs, probably leading to another apartment on the ground floor. I climbed over the railing and jumped. The fall was about 20 feet, and I landed hard. My feet hit first, and the pain was intense. I remember falling over, but I forced myself back up and started running toward the door. Behind me, I heard the men running down the stairs after me. I ran as fast as I could, got to my car, and jumped in. I didn't waste a second, I drove off without even looking back. I had no idea if they were still chasing me. All I knew was they hadn't caught me. I drove straight back to Domino's and ran inside. I told my boss what happened. He asked if I had called the police, and I realized I hadn't. So I called them and told them everything. Luckily, I didn't get in any trouble, even though the pizza was never delivered or paid for. It turns out the unit I was supposed to deliver to, number 209, was vacant. Nobody lived there. I had been set up by someone, but I never found out who. I stayed at Domino's for about another month before quitting altogether. I was working late one night in my office, trying to finish a report that was due in a few days. I had some tea to help keep me energized and was trying to get it all done as fast as possible. Staying up late was a regular thing I had to do for work, and it was always difficult for me to maintain focus once I started getting tired. As I worked away at my desk sometime during the night, there was a knock at the front door. I got up and looked down the hallway. I had no idea why anyone would be at my door at this time. I walked to the other end of the house and looked through the peephole. As far as I could see, nobody was outside on my porch. I stepped back, thinking maybe it hadn't actually been the front door. I'd been so focused on work and was on the opposite side of the house when I heard the knock. It was light, so I just assumed someone was at the door, but I didn't know what else it could have been. I went back to my office and started working again. Maybe I should have been more concerned, but I was so tired I just wanted to finish my report. I forgot about the knock completely. I stayed at the computer for almost another hour, typing away. Nothing else happened, but I was getting more tired by the minute. My focus was fading, and my eyes were getting heavy. Just as I was about to call it a night, I reached for my tea, and in that moment, I saw a pair of eyes staring back at me through the window across the room. It was clearly a man. As soon as he realized I saw him, he ran away from the window. My heart was pounding. I sat there frozen, eyes locked on the window. It had happened so fast I felt like I was in a daze. After a moment, I stood up and ran over to cover the window. I didn't know who he was or why he was watching me, but it being nearly midnight made it even more terrifying. I rushed to the front of the house and looked through the peephole again to see if he'd gone to the front yard. I didn't see anyone. I checked a window at the back of the house too, nothing. My adrenaline was racing now, and I wasn't tired at all anymore. The silence in the house was starting to feel eerie. Had the man really left? Or was he still outside? I went back to my office, grabbed my phone, and started heading toward the front door. My plan was to call the police while keeping an eye on the doors and windows. But just as I reached the end of the hallway, I froze. A tall figure was standing at the back of my living room. He was wearing thick clothing that hid his identity. His eyes weren't the same as the man at the window, this was someone else entirely. He didn't hesitate. He charged at me across the room. I turned and ran to my office, slammed the door shut, and locked it behind me. I pressed my body against it, bracing for him to try breaking it down. But he didn't. He stopped just outside the door. I could hear him breathing. Then he began to pace back and forth in the hallway. A moment later, I heard it again, a light knock from the other side of the house. The man outside my door started walking down the hallway, back toward the living room. Then everything went quiet. I stayed pressed against the door, completely still. I couldn't hear a single thing. Whispering into my phone, I called the cops and begged them to come quickly. I waited for what felt like forever before I finally heard sirens outside. The police entered my home, calling out as they searched room to room. Eventually, they reached my office. They never found either of the men. To this day, I still don't know how one of them got inside or what they were trying to do. I think the knocking sounds were some kind of signal between the one outside and the one already in my house. But that only makes me wonder, what was that very first knock I heard? The whole experience freaks me out every time I think about it. I wonder how long the first man had been watching me, and how long the second one had already been inside. It could have ended so much worse. I know I was lucky, but I can't stop thinking about the possibility of them coming back. And luck isn't something I want to rely on to stay safe. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.